a live demonstration of Palo Alto Network's traps.
I'm going to be showing the ability to block unknown exploits as well as unknown malware. First, let's go ahead and show a fully patched and AV protected machine can still be exploited by an unknown threat. On the right hand side here I have Metasploit running off the Kali Linux backend, and on the left hand side I have a victim machine. Now you'll see here our traps are currently disabled for both anti-exploit protection as well as anti-malware protection. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and open up the listener on the right hand side here. Now that that's going, I like to set up a situation where we have to work with innocent documents. Every day we work with Excel, PDFs, Word, whatever it might be. The idea here is that these contain exploits and we want to go ahead and detonate one of them. So we have a Megan Smith CV here. Now the Megan Smith CV is running. As you can tell, it's a pretty standard document. We can make edits to it, whatever it might be. But down here on the left hand side there's a page count occurring. We've done this to subvert some traditional methods of sandboxing documents such as this by putting a delay timer on them. Once it's reached page 1200, we'll look here on the right hand side and see if we have access. Okay, great. Now as the attacker, it would look to be that I'm in. Now, one of the first things as an attacker I might do is I might open and do the process list here. Take a look and see what's running. I may go ahead and give myself shell access, for example. If I do so, perhaps I want to do things like run the calculator, or maybe I want to type them a message letting them know that they're owned. Anything of that nature. But usually as an attacker, you want to go ahead and migrate, or perhaps you want to go ahead and dump a particular directory list. For example, maybe see Windows. Once I've reached that location, I'll go ahead and get the directory. Now I have a directory list of everything on that machine. The idea here is once an exploit's been utilized, we essentially have full rights to that machine, full access to run whatever it may be that we have to run. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what we can do from the traps side to prevent one of these unknown exploits. Okay, now that we've gone ahead and turned on traps exploit prevention, let's go ahead and double check that it's enabled. It looks like we're on. And then let's go ahead and end this attack and turn on the interpreter again. Okay, great. Now we'll basically perform the exact same attack. Turn on the listener, and we'll run the document again. Now as you see here, boot time, very low impact. Essentially what we're doing is we're injecting our DLLs, our trap DLLs, right into this process and waiting to trap the exploit when it runs. We're not monitoring or scanning anything about the file. We're simply waiting for the exploit to come in and trigger one of our traps. Once the trap is triggered, we should completely prevent the attack, leading for the stopping of any knowledge going to the attacker and vice versa. Let's go ahead and see what happens. It looks like nothing has been interpreted on the right hand side, and it looks like we have a prevention. So it states that traps has prevented a malicious activity. And it goes ahead and tells us the process, gives us additional details, but more importantly what it does is it sends all this information back to the endpoint security manager. This endpoint security manager itself, managing the entire endpoint, is able to go ahead and take in these alerts, process them, and make them available to the admin. Since the attack has been prevented, let's go ahead and click OK, killing the process. And now let's go ahead and demonstrate the anti-malware protection itself. As you can see here, all the boxes are checked for anti-exploit protection and anti-malware protection. Let's go ahead and demonstrate the policy-based restrictions. The policy-based execution restrictions are usually related to things like disabling the ability to run executables from the temp directory. So let's set up a situation, for example, where an attacker has somehow managed to get their executable in the temp directory and wants to run a batch script against it to execute. In this particular example, I'm going to use command shell, but the same could be batched. So what I'll do is now that I've gone to the temp directory and found the file itself, I'll try to execute it. Upon execution, what should happen is a prevention should occur. The malware prevention engine and the policy-based restriction have enforced the ability to completely eliminate the execution of .executable files from the temp directory itself. Now, while we're at it, we might as well also demonstrate our wildfire integration. The wildfire integration piece, if you can remember from the discussions, is related to the actual detonation of executables from anywhere on the machine and cross-referenced with our threat cloud based on hash. Let's go ahead and show an example of this integration with the Wildfire threat cloud. We'll close this. As you can see, we're still running the legacy AV solution on this endpoint, on the victim machine itself. It hasn't detected the malware yet. I don't believe it's going to detect the malware now. So let's go ahead and run the exact same sample from the desktop and see what happens. As you can see, we've gone ahead and blocked the exact same sample. The details are slightly different. Listening to a separate configuration here with the component of Wildfire. And as you can also tell, all three checkboxes are enabled, allowing us to collect the forensic data and send it back to the Endpoint Security Manager, which I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate now. Taking a look at the Endpoint Security Manager, or ESM, provides valuable information to the customers such as health of clients, the ability to manage the endpoint deployment, as well as the capability to report. But probably one of the most important tabs is the Security Event tab that we're taking a look at here. As you can tell, the Security Event tab actually provides our users with the capability to identify multiple types of exploitation prevention, as well as multiple types of malware activity. So let's go ahead and dive into one of these preventions from the exploitation perspective, for example. When we dive into the exploitation attempts, what we can actually identify is the capability of the actual prevention. So what was triggered? This is important in many cases to identifying the threat within the network. And for example, let's look at the most recent one that occurred. Now, it looks like from this view that UASLR, a exploit trap that we provide with our solution, caught the CV from Megan that we had noticed on the prior victim machine. It gives us additional information like what process it was, what user it was, and even some forensic information we might want to take a look at in terms of what XMLs were used. As we can tell, there was some RTF information here as well, and additional information we provide to our admin in terms of performing forensic activities. Now let's go ahead and take a look back at the threats. Let's dive into the malware threats, for example. Now, as you can see, this is a better view of all the preventions that have occurred within their environment. Now, we see here we have two from isthisbad.exe ran at Wildfire, and we also have an execution protection. We go ahead and we divide these up because it's important for the actual admin and users to be able to define exactly what was happening. We can tell that there was a trigger for isthisbad from attempt directory, and we can tell it was a piece of malware running on the victim machine here. Now additionally, we can take a look at a Wildfire example. And the Wildfire example is going to let us know that this particular module was a Wildfire triggered. It'll give us the direct path where that particular file was ran. And additionally, we can do things like add notes or even go ahead and retrieve the prevention data as well as the file from the endpoint. Now that sums up the Endpoint Security Manager, as well as the exploit prevention of unknown exploits and malware prevention of unknown malware. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking a look at Palo Alto Network's traps.